Most people think attraction begins with flirting, but psychology suggests something very different. Long before someone admits they like you, their brain quietly starts changing the way they treat you. The strange part? They usually don't even realize they're doing it. That's why some of the strongest signs of attraction aren't dramatic confessions or obvious flirting. They're tiny shifts in behavior that seem meaningless on their own, but together they tell a completely different story. By the end of this video, you'll probably think of one person who suddenly makes a lot more sense. Part 1. They start creating reasons to stay around. Think about the last time someone wanted to leave a conversation. They usually found an excuse quickly. Now think about someone who secretly enjoys your company. Instead of leaving, they create excuses to stay. Maybe they ask one more question. Maybe they walk with you even though they're going the opposite direction. Maybe they message you later because they forgot to mention something. These moments seem insignificant, but psychology calls this proximity seeking. When we're emotionally drawn to someone, our brain naturally searches for opportunities to increase contact, without making our intentions obvious. Notice the difference. They're not chasing attention, they're creating moments. And that's where everything begins. But time isn't the biggest clue. Something even more interesting happens inside their memory. Part 2. Suddenly, they remember everything. Have you ever mentioned your favorite coffee once? And weeks later they remembered it, or they asked about an interview you casually mentioned a month ago. Most people forget small details because those details aren't emotionally important. Someone who likes you processes your words differently. Psychologists call this emotional salience. Your preferences become meaningful. Your stories become memorable. Not because they have a better memory, but because your brain gives special attention to people you emotionally value. That's why they remember the song you like, the restaurant you wanted to try, or even something you forgot you ever told them. And then another change begins. It's no longer about remembering you. It's about reacting to you. Part 3. Your opinion starts carrying more weight. Imagine you're both in a group. Someone tells a joke. Everyone laughs. But before they laugh, they look at you. Not because they need permission, but because your reaction matters more than everyone else's. This is something psychologists often describe as social referencing. When someone becomes emotionally important, their approval starts carrying more emotional weight. You'll notice it in subtle ways. They watch your expression. They wait for your response. They care whether you enjoyed the movie, liked the restaurant, or agreed with their opinion. Without realizing it, you've become part of how they evaluate their own experiences, and that's a surprisingly intimate shift. But perhaps the biggest clue isn't how they look at you. It's how they start imagining the future. Part 4. Future conversations begin appearing naturally. Have you noticed conversations changing from today to someday? Instead of asking, "What are you doing this weekend?" they ask, "If we ever visit Japan, if we both lived in the same city, we should try that someday." They're no longer talking only about the present. They're mentally placing you inside future possibilities. Psychologists sometimes call this future simulation. Before relationships exist in reality, they often exist in imagination. The brain quietly experiments with shared futures long before the heart says anything out loud. And finally, there's one change almost nobody notices. Yet it may be the strongest of all. Part 5. You become the exception. Here's the mistake most people make. They ask, "Are they nice to me?" That's the wrong question. The better question is, are they different with me? Maybe they're friendly with everyone, but only you receive the long conversations. Only you get the thoughtful messages. Only you notice the tiny acts of care nobody else sees. Attraction rarely turns someone into a different person. It simply makes one person become the exception. That's why looking for a single sign often leads to confusion. No behavior proves attraction on its own, but when several subtle changes begin appearing together, more time, more memory, more attention, more future thinking, more exceptions, you're no longer looking at random coincidences. You're watching friendship quietly transform into something deeper. The truth is, most people don't recognize these changes while they're happening. They only connect the dots months, or even years, later. So here's a question. Out of the 5 psychological changes we explored today, how many have you noticed in someone you know? Leave your number in the comments. Your story might help someone else finally understand what they've been wondering about. And if you're curious about the opposite side of the story, don't miss the next video, where we'll explore why people often hide their feelings even when every part of their behavior is giving them away.